We want to welcome you to the Customer Success webinar series brought to you by ClientSuccess. I'm Brent Peterson, a Customer Success Strategist here at ClientSuccess. ClientSuccess is a customer success management platform that helps leaders and CSMs retain and grow their customer base through communication and collaboration across the customer journey. During today's webinar, we will hear from Sara Masson, Senior Customer Success Manager at Loopio. And Sara is one of the 2017 Customer Success Innovator of the Year finalists. We're excited to hear from her. The Customer Success Innovator of the Year award is open to all customer success professionals. Innovators submit their innovation, present their innovation to a panel of judges, and 3 finalists for the award are selected by the panel of judges. The finalists are invited to the CS100 Summit to present their innovation, and the winner is selected as the participants of the CS100 Summit vote confidentially for the Innovator of the Year. Today's webinar is definitely designed to be a collaborative session, so we encourage you to use the Q&A feature in the webinar to submit questions. Sara and I will pause at a couple of intervals throughout the presentation to answer questions, and we will save some questions for the end as well. We will be recording the webinar today, and it will be sent to your inbox later this week. It's my pleasure to welcome Sara Masson. Sara, we're excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Brent. I am excited to be here speaking with the entire client success community about the Customer Advocacy Ladder. Now, I joined Loopio as our first customer success manager. So over the years, I've gotten to view a lot of different processes, practices, and innovations that our team has put into play. But my personal favorite is our Customer Advocacy Ladder. Now, before I tell you about our Advocacy Ladder, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I work in Toronto, Canada. So if you notice the accent, that is why. I am, in fact, a Canadian. And I work with this phenomenal group of Loopio employees that we call Loopers. Now, we're a really, really collaborative bunch, which I personally love because participation is probably my favorite thing. In fact, I love to participate so much that as a young undergraduate student, I was in a cohort of about 400 people, and I very quickly developed the nickname of that girl in the front row. So I love to participate. And when you love to participate as much as I do, you quickly become pretty comfortable being uncomfortable. Me and embarrassment are old friends. But there are some people I would not risk embarrassing. That's my customers and those lovely Loopers that you saw in that photo. So how could a customer success manager embarrass their customers or their teammates? Well, like any good customer success professional, let's start with my customer. I could overburden my best customers, reach out to them for a reference call for the 3rd time this month. Suddenly they're doing everyone's least favorite thing and saying, no. Nobody likes to reject people. I don't want to put my customers in that position. I could also ask my customers to write a review before they really have any experience working with me. Suddenly, once again, they are stuck telling me no, or pretending they didn't read my emails, which is not good for either of us. I could also ask them to write a review and give them absolutely 0 ideas. So they're a great customer, they want to help me out, but suddenly they're sitting there staring at a blank screen with writer's block, and they're frustrated, and they're getting coffee and then going back to that blank screen, and it's not fun. They feel embarrassed. But perhaps, worst of all, I could take a customer who loves going to bat for me, who is always there, who I know I can rely on, and put them on the call to be a reference customer. And on the other end of the line, is their direct competitor. That is not something I want to do to any of my customers. What about those lovely loopers that we saw in that photo? What can I do as a customer success professional that might actually embarrass people across my organization? Well, I could take one of my sales team's prospects that's well vetted, they've gone through multiple demos, they have buy-in from all of the right stakeholders. All they need is a reference. But that reference customer is actually an unhappy customer. The prospect is embarrassed. The customer is probably pretty embarrassed. You had better believe that at the very least that salesperson is really embarrassed, and even me, the girl in the front row, is suddenly turning red. I can also work with my marketing team to develop resources that are beautiful, pretty, well-branded, but with stories that fall flat. No clear success metrics, no compelling use cases, and suddenly it looks like we can't prove ROI with our platform. Or I could have our sales team point their prospects to review websites where the last review is from April, 3 years ago. And suddenly people are wondering, are we even still open? Are we asleep at the wheel? What's going on here? It's a pretty embarrassing position to put people in. So if there's so much risk inherent in advocacy, why bother investing in an advocacy ladder? Well, when I say advocacy, I don't just mean somebody who loves Loopio so much they just want to shout it from the mountaintops. What I mean is a tangible request that we know drives our business forwards. But advocacy without process is chaos. It's messy, it's difficult, it's frustrating, and I have lived through that chaos. So I'd like to invite all of you to join me in my time machine. Don't worry, we're not going back to any embarrassing hairstyles or wardrobe decisions. We're going to 2016, fairly recent, January 2016, to be precise. Now, I've just joined Loopio. I'm employee number 10, and we're a pretty small company. At the heart of our organization, we have always put customer success and our customers first, which means that we want to provide that best-in-class experience, and we're investing heavily in our customer relationships. But the only people managing those customer relationships are myself and our CEO, Zach. So we were doubling down on those customer relationships, and we knew we could get advocacy from those relationships because we were investing so heavily. But like most young companies, there wasn't a lot of process backing that up. So what that means is there was no prioritization or organization when it came to advocacy requests. So anytime you had a happy customer, you wanted to pursue some form of advocacy, it became a conversation. So I'd have a phenomenal call with a customer, and I'd turn to our CEO, Zach, and I'd say, hey, Zach, this customer, they're really happy. We delivered this amazing solution. We have a new process. I'm excited. What should we do? Should I maybe ask them to write an online review? Maybe they could be a reference. I mean, they were really, really happy. Maybe I could ask them to do a case study with us. And so we'd go on, and we'd come to a decision. And then I'd start writing an email. And sometimes I'd search my inbox and use an email I'd sent in the past. There was just as much chance of it being a really good email as a not so good email. So here we were reinventing the wheel every single time. And we were kind of spinning our wheels, trying to keep up with all of this advocacy and maintain all of our customer relationships that we knew were the heart of our business. So with all of this work we were putting into advocacy, we obviously had really diligent measures in place, except we didn't. So there was no measurement of advocacy happening. We knew it was important, so we were doing it, and we decided we would worry about measuring it later. Now, what about the customer experience? I said that was at the heart of our decisions. What did that look like? Well, we were investing in doubling down on creating these superstar customers where we went to bat for them. We always went above and beyond, and we developed deep and meaningful personal connections with these customers. And once a customer had reached that stage, we would approach them and ask them to be reference customers for us. But like I mentioned, younger company, smaller pool of customers, and we were waiting for them to be really, really devoted to our relationship and ingrained in our company before we asked them to be references for us. That meant we had a pretty small pool of reference customers. But like most fast-growing SaaS companies, we wanted to grow quickly. So our sales team was bringing all of these great prospects in, and they wanted to speak with reference customers. So as you can see, small pool of customers, big group of people who wanted to talk to these reference customers. We weren't going to say no to these prospects, which means we were putting a heavy burden on our best customers, the relationships that we'd invested the most in, that we had really devoted the time to curating. We were now risking by not having strong process in place to back up how we managed customer advocacy. We knew something had to change. And so we worked to create the Customer Advocacy Ladder. Now, by doing this, we made sure that we had clear, defined timelines for our customers. We were reducing risk and ensuring we weren't missing opportunities. We introduced clear processes. So those conversations we were having after a happy customer call, they didn't have to happen anymore. We knew exactly what advocacy ask to put in and when. We also introduced email templates. So there was no more sifting through my inbox and finding an email that I thought was pretty good. I had very clear templates to rely on for different stages in the advocacy lifecycle. Now, by using templates and processes, I was saving time that I could then reinvest in other things, which means, effectively, we had increased the capacity of every CSM on our team by giving them really strong processes and templates and removing any ambiguity from this equation. Now, we talked earlier about all of the risk inherent in advocacy. By introducing all of these processes, we reduced that risk. Most people approach all of the risk they see in advocacy by not approaching enough customers. But as we saw, having a small pool of advocacy customers has its own risks. So we were cognizant of all of that. But my absolute favorite thing that we did with our Customer Advocacy Ladder is kept our customer centricity true as we built this. And we made sure that every single stage of the advocacy ladder brought value not just to us, not just to our sales team, but to the customers we were interacting with as well. Now today, I'm going to show you behind the curtain and walk through Loopio's Customer Advocacy Ladder. But before we do, Brent, I'd love to turn it over to you for any questions.
So Sarah, I'd like to ask just one question here that I think will help understand what you're going to present here. But does the advocacy ladder need to be a complete and formalized process, or is it something that you can kind of pick and choose pieces of it and implement those pieces?
That's a fantastic question. And I am big on something that we call jab, jab, hook, and that is you always start small. I never want people to start by building out some massive process without testing things and knowing that they'll work. So introducing small bite-sized pieces is absolutely the way that I actually approach most things that we do on our customer success team. So if you really like the process for the first rung of our ladder, I would say start there. There's no reason you need to have a formal process behind the entire ladder to get started.
Great.
Any other questions? Oh, no problem. Okay, so now let's go behind that curtain. The first rung of Loopio's Customer Advocacy Ladder is to write an online review. Now, we have two preferred review websites, G2 Crowd and Capterra. So we'll reach out to our customer and ask them to review their experience with our platform and team on one of those two review websites. In terms of timing, we're putting that request in or considering it for request as soon as a customer exits onboarding. And that's because it's a really high-touch stage in the relationship. We know exactly what success metrics we were looking for. We've considered the risk fairly low. We have a really high buildup of those reviews already. In terms of value for Loopio, we're driving on lead generation, brand awareness, and trust building. But what about the value for our customer? Well, whenever possible, we like to work with G2 Crowd on their initiative G2 Crowd Gives to make sure that they're actually donating money for every review received. So our customer can leave this experience feeling really good. Not only did they help other people discover Loopio, but they also helped donate to charity. And all it took them was a few minutes of their time. So it's a really positive experience overall for our customer. Now, you might have noticed I said the first trigger point as to when we're considering this customer for advocacy. Sometimes we'll have a customer and they'll be exiting onboarding. Things are looking pretty good, but they're just not quite where we want them to be. So in that situation, can I just ask my customer anyway? No, we are customer success professionals. We never compromise our relationship with our customers to put them in this advocacy ladder. That is not what we're about. We are not interested in forcing our customers up this ladder. But we don't want to miss out on opportunities either. So what we'll do is delay that request by a month, and then we'll reconsider it. And if the customer's still not ready, we'll delay it again. By doing this, we're ensuring that we're not leaving any opportunity on the table. We're putting our customer relationship first, and we're making sure that our review websites are now seeded with reviews from the entire customer life cycle. So our customers are writing that review on their experience with our platform and our team, and we know that's important because, like I said, we invest in those customer relationships. Once we've got that review written, we'll schedule our next trigger. And that brings us to the next rung of our advocacy ladder. And that's to be a reference for us. Now, in this reference situation, I'm not on the call. I'm directly connecting a late-stage sales prospect with one of my customers. So in terms of risk, it's a little bit higher. How do I know what my customer is likely to say when they're given full license to speak freely without me there? Well, they just wrote a review. That was pretty public. I have a good idea about what they care about and what they're likely to talk about. So in terms of timing, this is coming in 3 months after that first request. We want to give a little bit of time for the other requests to not be quite so top of mind, but still keep things timely. Make sure that we're not letting go of these opportunities. Now, in terms of value for Loopio, that's pretty clear. We're helping to build trust and close deals. I don't think anyone needs an explanation about why it's so valuable to help close deals. But what about our customers? They're spending time, sometimes these calls we've heard go up to a full hour, talking to somebody else. Well, for our customers, because we've grown the number of reference customers available, we're now doing really targeted, curated pairing. So we're connecting people in the same industry, in similar roles, and our customers are constantly telling us that they love doing these reference calls because they're growing their network in a highly curated way, and they're learning from these companies as they talk to them. Now, there are 2 stages left of our customer advocacy ladder, and they're what I'd consider to be elite advocacy asks, which means sometimes customers get stuck at the reference stage. So that's fine. We'll let them sit there for a full 6 months. We'll actually let them sit there for a full year. But I mean, eventually something's got to give, right? We want to get to that next rung of our ladder. So can we just bump them up to the next rung? No. We never compromise our customer relationship to force them up this ladder. We are customer success professionals, and we put the customer first. But sometimes the time is right, and the relationship is there, and our customer is using our platform in compelling and exciting and innovative ways, and that customer is ready to write a case study. Now, when it comes to a case study, we wait 6 months from the last request, but it's always a full year after our customer signed up with us, so about the 13-month mark. And that 1-year mark is really, really important. And that's because what tends to happen at the 1-year mark? Your customer just renewed. So that means your churn risk is way down. You know they're invested in this relationship. You also know they're not going to try to use that case study as a bargaining chip on that renewal. So it's a really important time. And we have great success metrics. We already have proven ROI over that first year. So the story is just really rich and compelling at that stage. Now, in terms of risk, it's a little bit higher because it's a really big investment of time. That's why we're waiting till the 1-year mark. And it's why we're always doing a discovery call to make sure that there's a really compelling story there. In terms of value for us, we're driving at lead generation, very clear proof of ROI, and thought leadership for the industry and for our customers. But what about for the customer that's doing this case study with us? Well, for them, we are shining a spotlight on the phenomenal work they are doing. We're not just making our software look great. We're making our core contact or customer champion look phenomenal because we know they're doing really creative, exciting, and innovative things, and we want to make sure that's showcased. Now, this is a great resource for our champions to use when it comes to any time they're looking to build their careers. I have one more rung to my customer advocacy ladder, and it's what I would consider to be the big kahuna of advocacy asks, the Customer Spotlight webinar. Now, in this webinar, I'm taking one customer and putting them in front of all of my other customers and a select group of sales prospects. So in terms of risk, yeah, we're talking a pretty high risk here. So how do I know that this customer not only has stories to tell, but can draw you in? I want them to be compelling and exciting and engaging. But I just read a case study with them. We have spent a lot of time together lately. I know that they can get you excited about the really cool stuff they're doing. Now, with these webinars, there's an extra value that we don't see with anything else, and that's because it is a live webinar. It's really easy with a quote, even a review, to make a few tweaks. But the amount of trust that you can build in a live webinar when someone speaks about their experience can't be replicated in any of these other forms. We're also not posting these on our website. this is not publicly available information. It's a gated resource that our customer success team reuses, but our prospects know they are getting in on a very scarce resource. So for our customer success team, we can use this for content marketing. But from a sales perspective, creating that scarcity and that excitement. So this webinar sounds great, but how does this actually play out? What does a spotlight webinar look like? Well, it could be me talking to Rob Wonder, who works at IBM Watson Health, who walks us through the entire journey from his first day, and he's the new guy, and things are messy and chaotic, and everything's kind of flying everywhere. And so he introduces just a little process, because remember, he's the new guy, but it goes really, really well. So he keeps going, and he implements another one. And then he implements Loopio. And he keeps going all the way through to when his former company, Merge, was acquired by IBM Watson Health. And that acquisition went seamlessly, and their processes folded beautifully into this massive organization. Or it could look like me talking to Christy Fitzgerald, who works at Sprinkler. Now, Sprinkler has over 200 people collaborating on RFPs. And if you don't know a lot about RFPs, that is a lot. So she joins our audience to tell them about how they have this beautiful marriage of process, culture, and technology that allow them to scale this collaboration. So what are our customers getting out of this? Well, they're learning from experts in their field. They may not have a lot of other opportunities to connect directly to the experts and leaders who are doing really creative, compelling, and innovative things here. We've been really, really lucky that everyone who's done a webinar with us has actually shared their contact information, so our customers can follow up directly with them after these webinars. So for Loopio, this is how we chose to build our advocacy ladder. We have a review, a reference, a case study, and then a customer spotlight webinar. Brent, does anyone have any questions about this advocacy ladder?
Got some great questions, and thank you for laying out the steps to your ladder so clearly. First question here is from Niam. I hope I pronounced that name right. How much of Loopio's advocacy ladder is automated?
That's a phenomenal question. So I think when it comes to advocacy, as long as you're dealing with a mid-touch to high-touch kind of customer relationship, you don't want any automation. Everything is a semi-automated approach where we know when those touch points should happen. We have templates we can use as a starting point or as a resource, but I don't want any advocacy requests going out before there are eyes on it and somebody sending that and making a decision about whether it's the right time. Could be that you know that customers in their crazy busy season and next week will be way better. We know we'll get better results if we have that human intervention step.
Great. And in a low-touch environment, I imagine as long as you were careful about it and built the right filters and right triggers, you could also automate certain steps, especially maybe the first and the first rung.
Absolutely. Or you could choose an automation approach where you automated follow-ups. So in a lower touch or a tech touched kind of customer success relationship, I think that has a lot of application.
Great. Now, we did have a question from Jennifer about the review sites you mentioned. You mentioned G2 Crowd and Capterra as your two main review sites that you focus on. We like those as well. And I just mentioned several others in the chat window. Other review sites that are commonly used include Gartner's Peer Insights, Fit Small Business, Software Advice, and I'm sure there are others as well. Those are some good review sites that I'm familiar with. And
absolutely.
Sarah, Francis has asked another question as well. What are the KPIs you use to determine how successful this ladder is?
That is a great question. So I have a few slides on that. that we'll be talking about shortly. But I think that what's really, really exciting is that we are now using advocacy as a core metric we're tracking our team on. So every single advocacy win is tracked, and we are keeping track of how many advocacy requests each CSM is achieving on a quarterly basis. So advocacy wins is the main KPI we're looking at. We know that when it comes to application, case studies are used in basically every single sale that happens. We know references are used in about 50% of our sales that are closing. Reviews bring a lot of people directly to our platform. So we know we're getting a lot of value from these advocacy requests. The main thing that we're tracking is how many each CSM is able to basically close.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem.
One more quick comment on the review sites. As you begin an advocacy ladder, if you are just starting out, Sara, would you recommend, as I would, focusing on maybe 1 or 2 review sites exclusively, and building up a substantial base of reviews with 1 or 2?
Absolutely. I think that focus is incredibly important here, because then you have the ability to, if a, say, sales prospect asks for a reference on a first call, you can point them to a single review website where they can get a really thorough, detailed overview of their experience, and let them know that you will happily connect them with a prospect or with a reference customer, but a little bit later. So you get a lot more value out of these review websites when you have 1 or 2 that have a really substantial base of reviews that's been built.
Wonderful. Well, there are several more questions here, but I think we'll save those for the end.
Okay, perfect. So we've looked at the Loopio advocacy ladder. Now I'd love to talk a little bit about the problem that we solved here. With our advocacy ladder, we've managed to amplify our brand awareness, effectively position ourselves against competitors, move prospects down the sales funnel, and leverage advocacy to build customer relationships instead of risking them. By implementing really strong processes, we've made sure that we're not sending advocacy requests before it would be appropriate. We also are making sure that we're sending vetted, approved emails that have a high conversion rate. We're creating compelling resources and not leaving opportunities on the table. We've also managed to reduce the burden on our reference customers by making sure that we have a really big pool of reference customers available to us. When it comes to reviews, we're giving people a spark of an idea so they can avoid that dreaded writer's block. And we're making sure that we're never reaching out to people too soon before they'd have anything to say. We've cleared the fog when it comes to those resources. So they all have really compelling stories that can be shared and very clear success metrics. Now, when it comes to our reviews, we've made sure that they never grow stale and they stay very, very fresh. We've also reframed the reference experience from something where you could have a contentious experience or an unhappy customer, a situation where you always have a really great experience for everybody on the line. Now, some of you may be sitting at your desks and thinking, yeah, those are cute pictures, but show me the numbers. So let's dive in. To date, 36% of our customers have written a review. 30% of them are references for us. We've developed 7 case studies. We've hosted 4 spotlight webinars, and we have our 5th coming up in about 2 weeks. Thanks to our advocacy ladder, we have a strong presence on G2 Crowd and Capterra. Now on G2 Crowd, we were named as a runner-up for March SaaSness, where we went head-to-head against 64 other big name tech companies. We've been named a high performer in our category, and listed on the top B2B Canadian tech list. Now, for those reference customers, not only are they being paired with really strong fit people, but we've also managed to reduce the load from about once every quarter to closer to once every 6 weeks. Now, as a team, every single advocacy request we're putting in is tracked. So systematic, scalable, very clear tracking, which means we can use this as a core metric for everyone on our team. And it's reducing the load on the customer success managers because they have no more ambiguity. They know what to send and when. Now, there may be some of you who've been watching and are interested in creating your own advocacy ladder. Now, if so, I hope you know the keyboard shortcut to take a screenshot. If not, you're going to get a recording of this webinar, so you can just zoom to this next slide. But I have a few steps you can follow here. Now, the first is to identify the advocacy asks that drive value for your organization. On every single step of our advocacy ladder, we identify the value that's being created. If you can't articulate the value, it does not go on your ladder. Next, you want to rank those advocacy asks by risk and investment from your team and your customer's team. You want to know which advocacy asks should precede others and by how long. Then you'll want to create email templates and test them. There is no point in creating a beautiful process-driven approach and then using resources that don't convert. From there, identify the trigger points. As you saw, we have a trigger point that are time-based, but also potentially based on the last advocacy request. So be flexible, play around with them, see what works for your customers. Now, the last step is really, really important. You probably have customers today. There may be opportunities that haven't been captured yet. So evaluate that existing customer base. You don't want to hit them up for 3 advocacy requests all in 1 week, but get them started on that ladder. See where there are opportunities you can take advantage of today. Now, I mentioned that one of the things I love is every time we've done a customer spotlight webinar, the person has shared their contact information. I wanted to do the same for the client success community today. So feel free to reach out to me. You have my email here and my LinkedIn information. I'm happy to answer any questions that the audience has. Now, if you've been listening and thinking, Loopio sounds pretty cool, I wonder what they do. We are a SaaS company, as I mentioned, based out of Toronto, Canada. And we help people to respond to RFPs, RFIs, and security questionnaires faster and more efficiently. So we really scale that process and allow people to collaborate and automate as much of that as we can. So if you do any RFPs or security questionnaires, it's a really fantastic software. I definitely recommend you check it out or email me with questions. And I just wanted to thank all of you so much for taking your morning, afternoon, lunch hour, whatever time it is for you, to walk through the advocacy ladder with me today. It's been fantastic. And Brent, why don't we turn it back over to you for any questions?
We do have several great questions here that I think we'll be able to answer, so we'll try and get to as many of these as possible. And thank you, Sara, also for the excellent presentation. Michaela asks, have you ever included a product feedback interview in your advocacy options?
That's a really great question. So as an organization, we are known for being very feedback focused. Most of our customers know that their feedback is sort of constantly logged, followed up on. And so once they've been brought into product feedback conversations, they've all kind of been like thoroughly excited, just like out of their mind, very excited to get the opportunity to get in front of our product team. So for us, that's already happening organically. It wouldn't quite fit into our ladder. But if this is something you're finding challenges with today, I think it would be a really high value addition to your advocacy ladder.
Great. And as you mentioned, it's should be a major positive for the customer, right? The opportunity to give their feedback and participate in the process should be a major relationship builder.
Absolutely.
Heather,
oh, go ahead.
Heather asked, how are CSMs being measured? Is there an incentive structure tied to the advocacy ladder?
Right now, there is no incentive structure tied to advocacy. It's a core measurement we're looking at. I have spoken to other leaders of customer success teams who are building out bonus structures around advocacy. I think what I've heard most often from other people I've been talking to is that it's typically bonus-based instead of something that might be a little bit more commission-based.
Excellent. Okay. So it's an option. It's something to consider.
Yes, we're not doing it, but I have heard from others that they've implemented it.
Okay. Awesome. And Naim asks, we like to ask customers to speak at events for us. Where would you place this on the ladder? For example, would this be a rung above webinars?
So I think that would depend on the different items that you put onto your ladder, but absolutely. That seems like it's a really high investment activity. You probably have a smaller pool of customers that are already thought leaders who are speaking out at these conferences. I would say that is likely towards the top end of the ladder, if not at the very top. I would consider that to be an elite advocacy ask.
And I love some of the ideas that are being brought up here because it shows that there are many ways you can customize and build your own ladder. You know, yours may be 2 steps, it may be 10, but there's some great concepts in here that will work for your business that you know, maybe we haven't mentioned. So keep bringing those up. One more question here from Andrew. Andrew asks, how might your customer advocacy strategy be different when dealing with enterprise customers versus SMB customers? And I think we addressed this a little bit, but maybe we could kind of recap what we said about how the strategy differs with enterprise versus SMB customers.
Absolutely. So earlier we were talking about the approach to first reaching out to these customers. If you're dealing with SMB, you might have more of a tech touch approach where you're willing to do a little bit more automation here. Automation for the initial outreach, automation for the follow-ups. You could do things like once someone's hit certain success criteria with your platform or with your team, those emails are sent automatically. I would also say that you might want to focus more so on the scalable advocacy requests. So things like webinars, you need to have some sort of phone call, human relationship there to make sure that that customer's ready and confident and will look great after this webinar. So that might be a better fit for more of an enterprise relationship, whereas SMB, you might focus on more review websites. So I would say you want to focus on those things that need less human intervention at that side of the scale.
Wonderful. Now, jumping back to the KPIs that we mentioned, Emma Rose asks about the KPIs and asks, is each advocacy win when a customer goes up to the next rung, or is it when they complete the ladder?
That's a great question. So it is next rung. I think that once they complete the ladder would be a little bit too much to wait until that webinar was hosted. And we want to make sure people feel motivated along the way. So we want to give them those wins per rung instead of waiting until the very end of the ladder.
Wonderful. And one more question here. Monica asks about how often you reach out to a customer for a reference. What is the recommended cadence? And I assume she's asking, go ahead.
Oh, this is when someone's agreed to be a reference, how often we're reaching out to them to leverage that reference request. For us, this number used to be a lot higher when we had a smaller pool of reference customers. It was probably once every 6 weeks or so. I would say that's definitely on the high end. I prefer about once per quarter, roughly, as sort of a general guideline, but this might be restricted by what pool of reference customers is available to you. This is one area where I think focusing on just one review website, if you don't already have a good base built up, can be very high value, because that way, if you have a really, really early stage sales prospect, you can say, hey, we have all of these great reviews online. If you can go there, once you're later in this cycle, we'll absolutely connect you with a customer. We just want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Awesome. Dana has a comment, maybe not all customers are destined to make it to the top of the ladder. Do you find that to be the case, that this is not everyone even really can make it to the top?
Absolutely, and that's completely okay. If you have a customer who's sitting at one stage of the ladder, that's fine. That's also where if you have 2 review websites, you could say they wrote a review, 3 months later, they're not going to be considered for the next tier, but maybe they would write another review on that other review website. So you can get creative, even if somebody's staying at the same stage of the ladder, into how you can continue to build advocacy into that relationship.
Well, thank you, Sarah. This concept is excellent. Your presentation was wonderful. Clear as to why you were a finalist in this competition. We'd like to open the invitation to participate in the 2018 Customer Success Innovator of the Year Award. You can find the form on the CS100 Summit website, and we'll make that available shortly. As we mentioned previously, a recorded version of this webinar will be emailed to everyone who registered for the webinar. Client Success is here to help. We are incredibly passionate about helping you deliver value for customers through customer success processes. And because of our passion, we've built industry-leading technology to help you. We have many other resources available. I would highly recommend visiting the